I think what Zoom does, okay, it says it says that I'm streaming right now. So we're going to go ahead and take a peek at that in a sec. It will push me over to the live streaming page on YouTube, and then I'll get to check and make sure it looks like it is at the right page. Let me mute it. Yeah, it looks like I'm there at the right page. So go ahead and check it if you want, Tamir, just to make sure that we're on and that you get the same thing, but I think we are there.
Oh, well, I mean, it all looks good over here. I mean,
Okay, excellent, excellent. No, I think we're good. So, Tamir, this is James, my co-host. He
Hi,
has
Tamir.
just joined
Really,
us.
an honor to meet you, sir.
thanks.
Excellent.
Adjust
So,
myself just a little there.
yeah. So what I'll do is I'll go ahead over to Facebook and say that we are live now, and that'll remind people to get over. I think people are just so distracted with the news right now,
Right.
Yo.
every day, and we're starting to face the reality of what we have ahead of us.
Yeah.
Yeah. Even if the lockdowns end, it might be that people like Tamir are going to want to keep doing what they're doing from
Right.
home for a little while, right? Even if
Right.
it's not mandated.
Of
Right.
course.
Excellent. Okay, so I'm saying we're live now, and we will wait about a minute because that's the official start time before I do the actual introduction. But yeah, what I assume, Tamir, is that Zoom will adjust the volume levels as needed. Sometimes there's a little bit of a lag in their adjustment of volume levels, so something can be too low or too high for a while, but I've had pretty good luck with it. When you do your show on Zoom tonight, it's just going to be you, right? You're not going to unmute any of us, I assume, or maybe like later at a Q&A or something you would. So there wouldn't be any competition in levels, right?
Correct. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's where I find the problem to be is when there's more than one feed into Zoom. One will be louder, one will be, muted or sounding like it's in a cave or something. But so long as you've just got one channel, I've got a couple of amateur musician friends who Zoom together, trying to play, still jam together through Zoom, and they find it works, but they are troubled with the different volume levels.
Yeah. Have you tried any of that, Tamir, or no?
Well, I've been teaching online too. So,
Oh, so you do that all the
Oh,
time.
wow.
yeah.
Okay, so it looks like we are at the official start time of the show. So let's go ahead and get started. This is the Friday show that I do regularly with James Valliant, who you're going to see here in a moment. And this is None of the Above. And we are joined today, I am very honored to have with us Tamir Hendelman. And Tamir, I have described you as a world renowned jazz pianist, and I think that that's true because I know that you have traveled the world and played, and I can imagine that, like me, anybody who sees you even for the first time decides, okay, I have to follow this guy forever, and he's an amazing talent. But at the very least, award winning. And I had the tremendous privilege of being at a performance that you list as an extremely notable performance that you did on your website. And that was way back in 2001, before 9/11, the good old days, as I like to think of them. You were at the Hollywood Bowl and you played with the Clayton Hamilton Jazz Orchestra. And it was, I guess, the first performance of this arrangement of Canadiana Suite by Oscar Peterson. And as I recall, Peterson was also there, but not capable of playing Canadiana Suite. Is that correct?
I don't think it was that he wasn't capable. It's more that he was featured with his own trio in the second half of the show, or his own quartet
Okay.
rather. We paid him a tribute by playing the piece, which originally was for trio, but which John Clayton arranged for the whole big band. And he gave me a project. He said, "Listen, I would like you to step into these shoes and memorize his solos and create your own cadenzas." And I was very honored to be invited to do that, and in the process, really got to know Oscar's music and his his spirit. Really, I felt is a spirit of joy, and I got to write a song dedicating it to him. And the morning of the concert, there was a special reception that Quincy Jones hosted for Oscar, and they had his Busendorfer Imperial piano brought over, and I got to play that song for him, which was a special moment for me as well, dedicating to this great master.
That
Right.
is wonderful. Yeah.
Wow.
So for me, it
And
was a fluke that I was there, but
wow.
it was because I had been a longtime subscriber to summer concert series at the Hollywood Bowl. And usually I went to classical. And that particular evening, we had switched out our tickets to get to this performance with some friends. And it was incredible. So I don't know if you're not going to remember, but I actually bumped into you during the intermission break at that show. My friend and I, we went, searching for the ladies' room, and then we find you, and you were so friendly, and I said, "Oh, how do we find you?" And so I found your website, tamirhendelman.com. I'm sure it's been the same since then,
Mm-hmm.
and I've been following you ever since and seen you everywhere, including one notable time in my living room in Colorado years ago.
Yeah.
So no, this man is so wonderful, and I really should have shared you with our audiences sooner. But now, not only are you giving me a treat, and in fact, you gave me a Zoom lesson this morning, but I get to share with my audience a way that they can easily check you out with little or no investment as part of a lot of the cultural offerings that are online right now due to, unfortunately, coronavirus. So I wanted to start, Tamir, and again, go to tamirhendelman.com and learn all about this man. He has many beautiful solo compositions, plus he plays with trios and jazz orchestras, including his own trio, and sells albums and has been touring the world. And as I said, I've been to many performances and I've loved all of them. And typically, you know about this, right, Tamir? This is not news to you that I'm not a typical jazz person, but you are a big exception in my life. So anybody, even if jazz is not your usual thing, you will be so impressed and enjoy and love Tamir's music. And I understand he's going to play a little bit for us today, but I wanted to ask you specifically, because of the whole coronavirus situation, what it's been like for you, and probably similar for other musicians around the world. How are you coping?
Can you say that one more time? I'm sorry. Do you mind if you give me like 20 seconds to just make sure that the surrounding is quiet? I let my family know.
Of course, not at all. Not at all.
Here, so I'll
Sure.
be right. Okay.
Okay, sure.
Well, how astonishing that we've got him. I mean, he really is an internationally renowned musician. Barbara Streisand picked him in 2009 to be a company.
Now you got frozen, and I can't hear you for a moment.
You can't hear me?
No, now I can. Now I can. So there was
Okay.
a glitch. There was a glitch for a second.
Oh,
So Tamir, the Zoom glitch just happened to coincide with your 20-second departure. So hopefully we're on track here.
I'm being told that my internet connection is unstable, whatever that means.
Okay. So that could be why we had the glitch.
That could be it.
Yeah.
No,
So
I was just saying that it's quite an honor to have a guy. He's really internationally distinguished, as you say. I mean, Barbara Streisand picked him to accompany her in her famous Village Vanguard performance in 2009. This guy's the real deal. I was just listening to Destinations this morning. I posted it at Facebook. I really recommend people listen to it. It's awesome.
Thank you so much. Yeah, that's Destinations for me was a special album to do because, and it's very interesting, with everybody being home now. Destinations for me was all about being a jazz musician, traveling the world. Because everywhere you go, you're going to be influenced by different different folks, different music, different foods, different cultures, and as jazz musicians, that happens anyways with the different cultures, with Latin jazz and Makoto Ozone, great Japanese pianist who was also influenced by Oscar Peterson and Chick Corea, right? I mean, all of those kind of things happen. And you have these adventures and you remember different moments. I remember one time I went to Alaska with my trio. And I was walking down the street and I saw this little store with these Russian nesting dolls. And it reminded me of growing up in Israel and my grandmother who would come back from all her trips. And she would have these little nesting dolls and different things that she would pick up in her travels. So to me, jazz is so much about traveling and getting that experience of interacting with different people.
And your
So
music
that,
reflects a variety of influences. It's really, it'll sound like, classical jazz at one moment, and then it'll go into various moods. And your technique is just brilliant. I really highly recommend people check you out.
thank you.
And so I'm glad also, I mean, James, I should have introduced everybody to him, but as I said, now I also am going to help, I want to promote his show. I saw your first online show in this series that you're doing last week. And it's funny because I happened to be out on an errand. So I was watching it on the iPhone, which is not the very best way at all to watch it, but still I was able to hear well and see you well and enjoy a concert while I was probably illegally parked out in a Vista. There's a Vista place that I used to stop by when I was in the middle of errands and stuff and just check out the sunset and everything. And so I was in this place with a nice view and listening to your show. And it was almost as if you could have a night out, which people can't anymore. But so the question before you had the little 20-second rearrange there, Tamir, was about this whole era of coronavirus and how it is affecting performers like you, musicians, but also other types of performers, and what you're doing in effect to maybe also make some money, but also just kind of keep your sanity during this time.
Yes, there's so many facets to this because everybody's cooped up, but at the same time, they're getting to spend more time than ever with their families. I mean, to me, I'm used to being out the door, a third of the year. Like, that's pretty usual for me, not all at the same time, of course, a weekend here, 2 weeks there. Now we're kind of getting used to each other. It's like, but I mean, in a great way to being that close all the time, and it's wonderful actually. I mean, my daughters are doing the homeschool thing for a couple months now, and
Right.
it's so great to have them home. It's so great to spend time with them, and my wife, Sherry, she's a bass player and she's an author and she does clinics about teaching jazz to little kids and so on. She's been teaching from home. So this is like a little yeshiva. I'm kind of saying it in a laughing way because everybody's either studying or teaching or playing or going outside to play volleyball for a minute. So it's kind of cozy. I mean, of course, with musicians now the challenge is that a lot of us, I mean all of us basically, nobody knows when the next concert in the world will be, which is kind of unheard of, right?
Right.
Right.
Angeles just announced there's not going to be any big concerts probably for the rest of the year.
Hmm.
So that presents a real challenge to musicians, and we just have to kind of pick ourselves up by our bootstraps and figure out a creative way to keep the creativity going, to survive, but also to interact and to connect. And I see different people doing different streaming concerts, or even using various apps to record things together. So somebody might record something, send it to somebody else, and they'll put out a little collaboration. Teaching is another thing that a lot of us love to do. I've taught for many years privately, but also workshops, and also, of course, at UCLA, where I still teach online.
Okay.
And in a way, the last few weeks have given me a lot of chance to learn the technology of Zoom, but also of various apps. So I'll have my grand piano, which also plays MIDI, which basically means that it's like a player piano, and it can send electronic signals to the computer. And I found this application that will display a virtual keyboard. So if I'm playing and the student sees the keys, and they'll see the notes that I play light up, and they can copy those notes.
Oh,
Oh,
wow.
wow. Yeah, that's
Wow.
nice.
I mean, I can just imagine if, I mean, I think we should really be thankful that this is happening now and not 30, 40 years ago before internet.
Yes.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
Well, there's a double-edged sword in my kind of specialty, which I haven't talked to you about ever, Tamir, but I did a lot of research on right to privacy, published papers on it and such. And it happens to be that because we're all in our homes, we are all now communicating through so-called third parties, which are companies like Zoom or Facebook or whatever. And us communicating with each other, unless we're going the end-to-end encryption route, unless we're doing that, we are sharing information with these third parties in order to communicate at all with other people. And so what goes along with that is, because of the law, government can get all this stuff about us without a warrant, and you end up starting to have visions of Orwell's 1984. And that's a little concerning. And so then the question is, what are we going to do about this going forward? Hopefully we're not all going to be in this lockdown forever. I understand that maybe concerts with a lot of people in one place are not going to happen for quite some time, but perhaps other things are going to be
Well,
more
if I could
normal
just say
soon.
here, I don't want to live in a world where there are no live musical concerts. The excitement and the joy that I get from a live performance is really not comparable to anything else. And it's one of the things that really enriches my life. And if someone were to tell me that there's not going to be live concerts anymore, I'm sorry, just expose me to the disease right now, put me in ICU.
Well, the news that's coming out is that we're probably all going to end up getting exposed to it before there can be a vaccine anyway. But let's, maybe at least if we could do it at a Tamir concert, there would be this wonderful, pleasant.
At least, yes, exactly.
It would be soothing. It would help relax us about any nervousness we have about how sick we would get, et cetera. But what I have seen some musicians do now is not necessarily, you're going to be doing this concert out of your home this evening, correct, Tamir? And you're accustomed to having some events in your home and playing for some people in your home at least, right? So this is normal for you?
I'll tell you, I've had a lot of workshops in my home, but once a month for the last maybe 12 years, where students of all ages and levels, pianists and vocalists and others, would come and learn a few songs by a particular composer, and then we would have kind of a live forum for them to connect, to play together for the first time, to get over stage fright, to learn about chord progressions, about interpretation. And that was inspired by a wonderful pianist and educator named Barry Harris, who was a compatriot of Bud Powell's. And he's still around. He's in his 90s in New York. And I saw him do a workshop like that in South Central LA at a great place called the World Stage that Billy Higgins, the great drummer, started. So that's always been kind of a community thing that I've loved to offer, and it's a way for people to come together regardless of their level and just create music and get some positive feedback. In terms of house concerts, I've done house concerts for many years at various houses, mostly around LA. And there's been a tradition of them. A great house in the Hollywood Hills called the A-Frame. That's
I've been there, yes.
Great music. There's a house in Sherman Oaks that for the last year and a half I've been doing concerts in, and hopefully that'll start back up again in a couple of months. Very intimate, like a duo or a solo. But really, the first time that I gave a live concert from my home was about a week and a half ago, streaming. And tonight will be the second time. So that is kind of a new experience, but it's, it's wonderful to share that, on my piano and to have that intimate, different experience. I mean, it kind of takes getting used to playing without hearing the audience wrestling in their seats, or, have that little, talking before the show and all these different things. So I try to create an atmosphere that transcends the Zoom. I'll have people, give me images using the chat feature, and then I'll compose something based on that, or I'll have them clap along with a certain rhythm. Just the ways that we don't feel as isolated.
I would count on you to be creative with it. And I saw with the platform that you had been on just that one time last week that you were already being creative with that, and it was the first time that you had used it. So I expect that. One thing that I did see, again, I like a lot of pop music and everything. So there's this band called the Jezebels from Australia, and the lead singer, she's got this solo work she's doing now. And she participated in a variety show that they broadcast online last week. But what they did for that was they actually went to a venue where typically a live show would be staged. And just only the technical people were there, though, so you had your producers and cameramen and all that stuff. But I don't know which would be weirder for someone in your position. Would it be doing it from your home and, again, you're not having the audience, but maybe at least you're in a place where you don't expect an audience to be, versus maybe something that might happen for you would be you and other musicians go to a venue and you're still going to be streaming it online and there's not going to be audience there. That might even feel a little stranger for you. I don't know.
There's all kinds of unique experiences. I remember way back when I was about 15, I was doing a theater organ competition. And when I first started, I was playing electric organ, which was not the B3 kind of bluesy organ that you think about with like Ray Charles and Jimmy Smith, but instead it was more like a synthesizer where you could have strings and brass and pedals to play the bass. And so there was this competition for theater organ, which was more the old-fashioned when you go into one of those movie palaces from the 20s. And one thing that I noticed is when you played it, you only heard the sound 15 seconds later, or maybe 3 seconds later. So you had to kind of imagine what you're doing so these kind of things, you have to be able to improvise and kind of go with it and get comfortable sooner rather than later.
Okay.
I would imagine that the advantage of doing something in a theater is it feels like a theater and you could have more people and you wouldn't have to worry about them being too close to each other because the stage is bigger.
Yes.
Sound might be really like the theater sound. But I'm thinking down the line, maybe expanding to a duo. I think there's a little bit of a distance between the piano and where the second person would
I
be.
was going to say that you could have Sherry, and that would be beautiful. And right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. So, is that the duo you were thinking of?
That is one of them for sure. And I'm
Okay.
talking to my daughters, so we shall see.
How old are your daughters now, by the way?
They're 10 and 12.
Okay.
Yeah, and they started learning music for a couple of years, but now they're into volleyball and dance, and that's great.
Yeah, except for those kind of things maybe aren't going to go at the normal pace for a while as well. That's tough stuff. Um, so tonight you're going to give everybody a wonderful treat, and they can have essentially a night out in their homes watching you, or if they are doing what I did, again, I wouldn't recommend it because I don't know if I got very lucky. I sat there through your whole concert and no policeman ever came up to my car or anything and stopped me. But yeah, I got to sit there and listen and have a nice view. But no, typically our own homes, couldn't have a glass of wine when I did last time. This time I could, etc. So I'm looking forward to it. But you had said that maybe you would even give us a little bit of a taste during the Zoom, if it works technically today, so that people could get a sample and then.
What I'll do, and we're gonna try this little thing, rather than me playing solo piano for you all right now, because for that I would want to check the lighting again and the sound levels and all that. I'm gonna do a little experiment with you, and I'm going to go to a little YouTube clip, and I'm gonna give you a choice. I've got kind of a hard swinging thing with the Clayton Hamilton Big Band, or a more mellow Brazilian thing with my trio. Either way is fine. Which way would you like to go?
Choose whichever one first, but how about a little bit of each?
Right.
Great. So let's start with a little bit of Passarim. This is a song by Jobim, and what I'm going to do, I'm going to share. Let me see. Oh, you know what? I actually cannot share my screen because I think you have to enable it. I don't know if you can. I think.
Okay, so I have to enable it for you.
Yeah.
Multiple participants can share simultaneously. Let's see how that works.
Let's see how
Learning this on the fly. This is because of you, Tamir. So another thing I have to thank you for.
Okay, very good. Okay, so I'm going to try, first of all, actually before I share, let me open up a little window in Safari. In the meantime, I'll just keep on talking and tell you a little story about this tune. So this song, oh, there it is. Okay, very good. Okay, so this song is a song by Jobim, and it's actually very evocative because Jobim wrote a song about a little bird called Passarin or Passarinho, and the bird is flying over the Amazon forest, and as it flies, it sees the forest turned to flame, and the flame goes into the river, and the river flows into the sea. And it's kind of, he was writing it about, in a way, in a poetic way, he was writing it about the climate change and all the destruction of the earth that was going on with all the logging and so on. But he was writing it in a very poetic way. You know, the river turns to flame, and the flame goes to the river, and very picturesque song. And I did this live at a festival called Marcillac. Marcillac is a big festival in the south of France with my trio. And I think we're just about ready. So I'm going to share the screen and I'm going to share the sound. And let's see how this works. Let me just...
oh, wow. Look at you.
And let me move this out of the way. And here we go.
All right.
Wow.
We're back.
Wow.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you. Wow.
Yep. Always makes you smile and can make you smile even in these times. So,
Yeah.
yes. So, I don't know if you'll end up having room for your trio in your living room at a certain point, but that could be part of the phase into normal life plan. But the orchestra will not fit in your living room, but still, do you want to play a little clip? That would be great.
Yeah, let me see if I can line that up real quick. So this was, I think this might have been in Milan. This was part of a European tour that we had done. And the tour was with a great guitarist, John Pizzarelli, who's a great vocalist as well. And sadly, he just lost both his father and his mother. His father was a great guitarist who played on many recordings and was just the go-to rhythm guitarist named Bucky Pizzarelli, and his mother, Ruth Pizzarelli, as well. So we've lost quite a few jazz musicians during this crisis. We've lost Wallace Roney, who Miles Davis kind of dubbed his successor on trumpet.
Oh, wow.
And Lee Konitz, a great saxophonist, alto saxophonist who was in his 90s. Ellis Marsalis, the father of Wynton Marsalis, who was an amazing pianist and educator. And the jazz community is really hanging on. I mean, a lot of the jazz musicians are now in New York. I mean, a lot of jazz musicians obviously are in New York, and New York is really suffering.
Yes.
But people are just, of course, staying at home and doing what they need to, and just kind of weather the storm. So back to this tour that we had done. So the Clayton Hamilton Jazz Orchestra, led by John Clayton and Jeff Hamilton and Jeff Clayton. And this was a number that John arranged that came from a Ray Brown arrangement of this Duke Ellington composition. Actually, a Johnny Hodges composition. Johnny was alto saxophonist in Duke Ellington's band. This is called Squatty Roo. And it's kind of a long track, so what I'll do is I'm going to play you the beginning of the track where you hear the song itself, and then I'm going to skip to the piano solo and kind of zoom out of that, no pun intended. So let me see if I can once again get a screen share going. I think this might work.
Okay.
Okay, can you see this?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and we'll move this thing out of the way. Okay, and we'll do a large screen. Okay, let's try this. Let's
So see, Tamara, that is just ridiculously good. So yeah.
Wow.
So now,
How
and
exciting was that? Wow.
no, yeah. And so imagine, so I saw him play Canadian Suite, and it was basically like that as far as I remember. And so my question for you, Tamir, is there a recording of that 2001 concert with Canadian Suite with your solo or not?
Not that I know of.
Ah, it
Oh,
was,
that would be.
it was that exciting and more. And
Unbelievable.
imagine that
Wow.
you're in the, again, we got to get back to live venue because I was
Yeah.
sitting right there in
Oh
the Hollywood
man.
Bowl. And again, I knew nothing, and I'm going to jazz, which I hardly ever did. And I'm just, whoa, both of it. My friend and I both were blown away. And then to meet you, and then you were so nice. And then I went and saw the bassist that we just saw in the orchestra. He is also the bassist in the Hamilton Trio, the Jeff Hamilton Trio, or not?
Was the bass player in the trio for many years. About,
Yeah.
uh, I mean, until about a year ago.
Oh,
I guess about 18 years or so.
because I saw him, I think, at least a couple times.
Yeah.
So,
No,
okay,
he's amazing. He's just a great artist. You know. Yeah.
excellent. Yes.
Wow.
So,
What a privilege
um,
to have you today, really.
though, yeah. So, I want people to now, of course, maybe go check out even more of Tamir's work and some of your solo compositions I particularly love.
Thank you.
Um, so, I think if people go to your website and it's tamirhendelman.com and purchase a ticket for Tamir at home this evening, that they will be able to get as much of a treat of live music as they can as possible during this time, which,
The
in
closest
some
thing to a
ways,
concert, yeah. The
yeah.
closest thing
And
to a concert we can get, yeah.
and again, for me to recommend Tamir and say, okay, especially in Los Angeles, buy a ticket and drive an hour's worth of traffic and all of this, and they're supposed to take my word for it and say, oh, it's worth it, it's worth it. I'm not, again, there was a big discussion online, and I don't know how much you want to get involved in this, Tamir. This is a sort of philosophical discussion that James and I would have afterwards. But people were talking about, is it proper to say that there's a silver lining here? And if you can talk about silver linings, when could you talk about it? Or is it a better metaphor to say that coronavirus is giving us lemons, as I put in the title, and so we're in effect making lemonade out of it? There is at least something that we can do to make the best out of the situation possible, which is to do things like you're doing, offering this concert. And then that does give the opportunity for some people who had never been exposed to your work to have a very low investment way of doing so, especially when they're looking for some good quality material online. And interacting with you in a live show, I think, is just going to be such a treat for everybody.
Thank you.
Yeah. Wow. One of the advantages, one of the lemonades, I think, just that video clip showed, one of the superiorities of video over a live concert is we get to see Tamir's face up close.
If you're at a good live venue, though, for
You
instance,
have
like
to be,
Hollywood Bowl, then you'll
well,
have both, right? So
if
you
you're
can.
if you're up close at the Hollywood Bowl, but I mean, otherwise you have to be in a place like the Village Vanguard or something to be close enough to see
No, but they'll have
facial
screens
expressions.
too on these places, some of them, right? So
Yeah,
you'll
big
get,
screens.
you'll say, look, that little person down there, because I have a seat way in the back, that is actually him. And then you'll see on the screen,
Well,
him
that's
playing.
true. That's
And
true.
I think that was somewhat of the experience that I had, as I recall, at the Hollywood Bowl. But no, you're right, Tamir. I mean, or was it you, James, who said that it's better that it's happening now versus 30, 40 years ago?
I mentioned
Yeah,
that.
yeah.
Yeah, because the technology is available for you to at least do this. And again, I would, if those clips don't do it for you, and my recommendation, just go to his website, go onto YouTube and search more of his clips. Israeli Waltz is there, which is one of my favorites. I don't know if Babushka is there, but it's also the one that you were referring to earlier with the nesting dolls is a beautiful song.
Babushka, yeah, that's
Yeah.
right. Yeah, and I'll be doing more of these concerts. I hope to do them regularly, perhaps a couple times a month, and I think I'll be doing one, like I said, tonight at 6, and another one next Saturday at 6, in case anybody can't make tonight. So I'll have both of them posted. But thank you so much for having me, and it was great to meet you, James.
Well, the honor was mine, sir.
Thanks.
Thank you
And
so much, as always, Tamir.
sharing the music. I think that this is a time for all of us to just kind of not introspect, but come a little bit within ourselves and trust our abilities and get creative and connect with things that uplift us. And while it's good to keep on top of the news and the practical things that we need to do to keep safe, it's also good to take care of ourselves creatively, spiritually, musically, artistically, because that will feed our soul and that will allow us to stay positive, which is so important now.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
beautifully put.
And thank you. And I wish you and your family the best and staying safe and everything during this time. I look forward to enjoying more from you.
Oh
Thank you
yeah,
so much.
thank you to me very
Hey,
much.
James. All right.
Thank you.
Okay.
Take care.
Wow.
I know.
Wow.
Is he not just the most amazing?
Wow. I mean, it's so exciting and dynamic when he performs, and he's such a sweet, wonderful guy in person.
Yes.
Wow.
Yeah.
Thank you. That was great.
No, why did I not do this sooner? And this is the weird thing, again, about this time, maybe just the magnitude of everything, plus just kind of pushing you to get sort of creative about certain things. I've been obviously thinking more, I want to do more interviews and stuff. And then I thought, well, Tamir's got a show. Maybe he would want to promote it. And I would get lucky enough to have him on the show for
Right.
that. And so, yeah, now everybody gets a taste and they can see what I really love about him. And they see, yeah, Amy likes the Jezebels and all that stuff. And maybe they don't like, but
Well, he makes a really great point. I mean, right now we're in the midst of, I guess, what Ayn Rand would call a cultural value deprivation. And we need to be, I think, mindful and self-conscious about making sure that we feed our souls as much as our bodies and our health. So physical health. Yeah, he makes a really important point about that, I think. Yeah. What makes life worth living after all? I mean, like I say, if we're going to continue in clinical, lockdown mode because we're totally afraid of a disease, well, then life loses all of its purpose for me, all of its meaning, if I have to continue under house arrest indefinitely. But while we are under house arrest, at least, we should attend to the needs of our soul.
Is that what you're calling it, house arrest?
Well, when I was a prosecutor, and there was a light offense and someone may have had a health issue and they couldn't be in jail or something, we'd consider things like house arrest. And this is indistinguishable to me
Yeah,
from house arrest. But now we have, all 300 and some million people in America under collective house arrest, and they're just accepting it.
I have an analogy, a little bit of a metaphor about that in a second that just came to me. But I want to quickly answer something that Michael Martz over in the chat at YouTube has asked. He says, please ask at what point how late one can buy tickets for tonight. And my impression is that, of course, Tamir knew that we were going to be on this show live now, and that it was quite possible that people would, and I'm sure he hopes that people will buy tickets for tonight. And so definitely go and do it. I'm sure that he's probably going to, maybe even up to an hour before showtime, be processing whatever he can through the Zoom and PayPal and all that stuff. I just bought the ticket yesterday, although I had intended to do it before. I saw, I've been friends with him on Facebook for a very long time. And I saw his post. I said, oh gosh, I got to get the ticket. And gee, I wonder if he would want to come on this show and bless us with his presence. And of course, he completely outdid anything that was my expectations by coming on and mastering Zoom and sharing all the music.
Wow.
Because this is Tamir, okay? He's wonderful. So you will not be disappointed if you go grab the ticket. Okay, so let me get back to my thing, which is making funny analogies. So years and years ago, speaking of travel and getting out in the world and destinations, I had the pleasure of being at Lizard Island, which is off of Australia, and I had never scuba dived before, but it's sort of like the jazz thing, if you're there and you do it and you just throw yourself into it. So there is something that you can do called resort diving, where you have never gone scuba diving before, but you get a quick crash course, and then you get to go down with an instructor who makes sure that you don't do anything too stupid when you scuba dive. So I went ahead and did that. And we go out to the Great Barrier Reef. And of course, I want to go down and see all that there is to see. We don't go down super deep, right? Because we're all just these novice people, but we know we're going to go down, and I saw quite a bit. But at first, so we're going down. And when we were going down, I was starting to get a little claustrophobic, which is typical. You just feel like you get that thought of, oh gosh, I can't breathe the air normally. I've got this thing, and feels strange, and I felt uncomfortable. And so what I was told with the instructor is all I had to do was point up, and he would take me up. And we hadn't gone down very far yet, so it wasn't like, and I didn't try to go up fast, so I wasn't going to get the bends or anything, but I was calm about it, but I was like, oh, I'm not very comfortable. Okay, let's go up. So we go up, and when we go up, there's all these waves because we're out in the middle of the water, right? Like, we're not near the shore at all. It's pretty rough. And it was so unpleasant there that regardless of the risk or discomfort that I felt below, it seemed preferable. And of course, I'd had that, So my analogy is, here we are. We've done this lockdown thing for a little while. And the way that I'm seeing the news go is that it looks like people are starting to face the idea that, as unpleasant and as abnormal to us because we haven't lived ourselves through something like the Spanish flu, as weird as it seems, everything that we've done today to make our life so risk-free, relatively speaking, cannot counter a pandemic. Now, mind you, you can't avoid the consequences of a pandemic by trying to put government band-aids all over it, is my point. And people are starting to realize this, and they're realizing, okay, we're starting to get an idea through some of the testing. The testing's been inadequate, but there's little patches of more informative testing that have been done in different places around the world. And we're starting to get a handle on what in the world it is that we're facing. Doctors have some handle on how to treat it. There are different things that they're still exploring. Is it hydroxychloroquine, or is it this, it begins with an R, I can't remember, REM something of, that's an antiviral. But, they're getting some kind of idea. And then it's like me, where it's like, okay, it's rough up here. And I'll give you the roughness, right? Here's the roughness, and we need to end the lockdowns is the punchline. But I'll give you the roughness, right? And I had an experience of the roughness yesterday. So go out to the store, and I had to get a couple of things at the store. I'd run out of, one of the things was dish soap. So, you're doing all your cooking at home, you better have your dish soap, right? So I felt dumb. I had to go make this trip, but I, made the best of it, and I got some other things I needed. So I'm out the store, and it's a store I go to frequently. And it turns out that they're now, in my area, legally requiring the mask to be on. So the people are in front of the store, and they're saying you have to wear. And of course, I brought it with me, but I was kind of hoping that I wouldn't have to, because I am so careful in stores, people. I will never breathe on you in a store. I keep my distance. I'm very respectful of people, and I'm careful for myself and everything else, but still, okay. So, put the thing on. And I just noticed, again, this is the first time I've been ordered to put this thing on, right? And it hadn't happened before. And I just noticed I'm feeling kind of uncomfortable as I'm going to the store. And the store is eerily like quiet. There's just not hardly anybody there. And I'm shopping for sort of some normal things. I'm even looking at a little bit of clothing or something, and it feels just weird, right? And looking for clothing while you're wearing this thing, and so you feel uncomfortable. So I get through as quickly as I can to do the things that I want to do. And then I'm at the checkout, and I'm waiting, and there's a checkout line, like, not too far from me. And I see two women who are actually starting to get in a fight, and they're raising their voices. And the one is saying to the other, "You stepped towards me. Did you not step towards me? You want to take it outside?" "No, I am not trash," whatever, like, one was calling the other trash. And this is not, a trashy store. This is a store I've gone to all the time, and everybody's civilized, and it's, nice. And Yeah.
The frayed
And
edges are showing. Yeah.
yes, the frayed edges are showing. And so my point being, this is like
And
being at the surface and feeling how rough it is and saying,
and
okay,
yeah,
there's some danger down there,
right, right.
but
Well,
maybe it's time.
what's kind of weird is that there's a kind of moral priggishness that comes in. I mean, uh, when I'm out, when I first went out and the president had declared the national state of emergency, and that's the first time I'm at a store, before I got anywhere like 6 feet close to the woman in line in front of me, she said, "Would you please mind keeping your distance?" Well, I hadn't
Mm.
even gotten 6 feet close. I wasn't even
Wow.
8 feet away. I'd say I'm more like 10 feet away from her. And she said loudly, because she had to raise her voice so I could even be heard, 10
Sure.
feet away, "Please keep your distance from me." And I'm like, whoa, we're getting a little hypersensitive, aren't we?
That was pretty
I've
early
been,
on.
yeah, I have been for the last several weeks wearing first a bandana, and then a friend made me a mask, and now neighbors have brought over masks for me. So I wear the masks. I have no problem doing that.
You were wearing the mask then?
Oh, yeah. Oh,
Okay,
well,
so that might have
my
been
bandana.
okay, but
At
that
the
might have
moment, it was
been a
my
signal
bandana.
to her that you were sick. Because some people were wearing them early on if they were sick only. And to me, when I would see people then wearing masks, I didn't make a big thing out of it, but I would do my best to avoid them. It
Right.
wasn't like I was telling them anything.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Well, it's sort of a presumption then, I guess, if you were wearing a mask that early, that you were sick, because I was simply complying with, I think it was.
Oh, you just got cut off with your unreliable internet connection. Hmm. Yeah, I can't even hear the audio this time. Last time when the video would freeze, sometimes I would be
Already been
able.
a state recommendation. Oh no. I'm
Yeah,
back.
we had a
Oh,
blip there. We
am
had
I
a
back?
blip. You are
Okay.
back. You are back, but we had a blip, I guess, internet connection.
Yeah, I guess the presumption though is that it was a state recommendation. I think when I wore it wasn't a requirement or anything. It was just
Sure.
I was going to follow the recommendations, and there's a big difference between following a recommendation and being mindful of my own health and that of others,
Yes.
and having a gun put to my head and say you must. And the amount of risk that we're allowed to take is now a matter of law. Well, that's a strange thing. And we really, I mean, I understand that we really can't calculate the dangers until we get better information. And so we're sort
Yes.
of shooting in the dark here.
Yes.
But the sort of moralistic overkill that we're experiencing right now, where people, we have 10 feet away, keep your distance. What? Just because I'm wearing a bandana? Um, you know, it's extraordinary, absolutely extraordinary. I'm endangering their lives, and so they have this, attitude that how dare you even come close? Well, at all times, people could be spreading a disease like that. I mean, yes, I know all the differences with COVID-19. It could it's a nasty, nasty disease. It's worse in some ways than the flu. I understand all of that. It could leave permanent lung or brain damage in some people. I
Yes.
understand all of that. And I'm perfectly willing to take extraordinary precautions. And I have been for weeks now taking extraordinary precautions to protect my health and that of others. On the other hand, when you put the gun to my head and you start lecturing me, you're evil and you're killing people. Wait, hold the phone. Life is risky. Every time I go to
Yes.
the store, I'm taking
Yes.
my life in my hands about
Yes.
getting a disease, getting in a traffic accident,
Right.
and so forth. But this risk is somehow special, right? It's somehow magically special. And I'm not.
Yeah. I mean, I think that there's two things going on, right? One is there's a lot we didn't know, and so then maybe
Of course.
there's a value in slowing it down a little bit at the beginning to get information about what you're dealing with and ramp up and
Make sure the
prepare
healthcare system isn't overwhelmed. I
as
mean, one
best
of the
as we
main,
can,
yeah,
as
one of the
best as
main
we
thing.
can.
I mean, yes, this is a very contagious disease. So in the long run, most of us are going to get it. Just accept that.
Yeah, well,
And
here's the thing, right? So, kind of integrate this a little. I saw this morning, Amish Adalja is just out there, gangbusters, and he's doing such a fabulous job.
yeah,
And he posts a bunch of articles regularly. And one of the things he sometimes posts things that have nothing to do, well, not nothing to do, but are just more tangentially related to coronavirus stuff. There was a great article this morning actually showing about the promise of targeted antibiotics, like really narrowly targeted in antibiotics as being more, standard of care in the future and possible to make, which I think is a wonderful thing. Particularly, my health issues have been a past of taking too many broad spectrum antibiotics, right? So this is beautiful. This is good news for the future. So he posts that kind of stuff sometimes too. Definitely follow him. One thing that he posted this morning, which has some implications for what we're kind of facing, is they did a study on measles. So the sort of immunity that you would get from measles if you had been actually infected by the virus itself as a natural sort of infection from the virus versus the attenuated thing that you get when you are vaccinated.
Right.
And then there are different ways of delivering that attenuated virus. It could be aerosol versus whatever. But the big takeaway for me when looking at this article was that if you get the measles naturally, yes, you have a longer, more robust immunity if you go through it that way.
Mm-hmm.
However, they found that there's a downside of getting measles that way, which in some people at least, there's a big immunosuppressive effect. And so, the immunity that you get is not identical. It's not like you come out of it either that or the vaccine, either way with
Getting
this.
measles has a risk, right?
Yes.
Getting measles has a risk. A certain
Yes.
percentage of people will have complications, serious complications.
But apparently it's quite prevalent to have some sort of immunosuppressive effect. So it's not just, you kind of get through the storm and then everything's peachy. And that's the thing that I think a lot of us are concerned with coronavirus is that, you could survive it, but there may be long lasting effects and they don't know any about.
They don't know any of that. They're still just beginning at the dawn of scratching that, absolutely right. That's the whole thing. It's an unknown fear. And I suppose in that sense, it's understandable.
Try to get as much information as you can, but we can't sit here, I think, based on everything that I'm seeing now and having received in my, just going shopping, perceptual evidence of the fact that the current situation is untenable. I mean, I knew it intellectually.
Yeah.
I knew it intellectually, but then
Right.
just seeing how it's getting to these women and they're going to get into a physical fight in a store. And how crazy is it to get in a physical fight right now? Anyway, you don't want to make contact with
Exactly.
it.
So let's get up close and personal and exchange breath real close.
Right.
Crazy.
So it's just not tenable. But at the same time, I don't think that a lockdown for a certain period of time was a bad idea. Now we could talk government mandate versus people choosing to just hang out for a couple weeks and collect information.
Well, I think we could say that something like what the governor of Michigan did is ridiculous from the outset. I mean, that's unjustifiable on the face of it. You can go
what was his version of this draconian? Her version, I'm sorry.
Governor Whitmer. Here she is, I think, angling, perhaps Tucker Carlson said this, and I think he's got a point. She may be angling for VP for Biden, but she's Joseph Stalin of Michigan, right?
Wow.
She says the things, just to understand how arbitrary her rules are, you can go canoeing, Amy, but you can't go hunting. You can go boating, but you can't go motorboating. You can go to a hardware store, but you can't buy paint. These are the kind of arbitrary is the word, right? It's interesting. You can buy a lotto ticket.
Fund the government, yes.
Exactly, exactly. Stuff that helps fund her state. Because after all, the state of Michigan can't be out of resources. Y'all can, so you can't even go. If I wanted to drive, if I lived in Michigan and I wanted to drive by myself to my cabin in the woods where I could be all alone, that's illegal. You can't do that in Michigan. It just makes absolutely no sense. Purely arbitrary, has nothing to do with the health. It's just totalitarian instincts clicking in. And things she doesn't like, being hunting is out, you can't buy guns, you can't buy, certain things. But if it has to do with state revenue, you're absolutely right. She's made sure that that's still open, liquor and pot and lotto tickets, things like that, because the government of Michigan takes a healthy tax on each of those things.
Yeah, no, this is untenable. Just to take something that people have been a little silly about out there is the haircut situation, right?
Right.
Apparently, it is actually illegal for you to get a haircut, say from your hairdresser, even in the hairdresser's own home,
Own
etc.
home.
And
Own
yeah,
home.
yes,
Own home.
that is illegal. But at least in some states, I can't remember which state it was that Timothy Sandifer was tweeting about this morning. They're saying, yes, it's illegal, but oh, out of the beneficence of the government, we
No,
won't go after you.
I'm
Aren't
going
we
to try
aren't we
and
so nice not to
I'm
go
going to
after you?
try and not use a lot of profanity on that one. Unbelievable. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, the lady who does my wife's nails, she cannot do it in her own home or in our home wearing
Nails
a
are so
mask.
boring. Yeah.
One person in your home or one person in our home wearing a mask, illegal. Illegal. How dare they? See, on the face of it, a lot of these rules have nothing to do really with public safety, whatever, or they're so marginally connected to public safety that it's, nonsense. But it does have the
You
effect of
cannot be
shutting down.
trusted to follow
Oh,
proper hygienic practices if you invite that nail technician into your home, James. That's just
that's
how
just
it goes.
insane. So that each of us as individuals can't be trusted with our own health, or that the meeting of two people in a private home actually poses some kind of health risk. No, that's crazy. It's nuts. How on earth can they possibly? First of all, it's unlivable in the long run, but it really has precious little to do with public health or safety. So a lot of these lockdown rules are wrong from the outset, as far as I'm concerned.
Yes.
Even if there was some excuse, I mean, like I say, you could tell they were arbitrary from the outset, because even if I wore a hazmat suit, I couldn't go to work. I couldn't open. If I had all my employees wearing hazmat suits that they put on at home and destroyed at the end of the day, and I gave them fresh hazmat suits every morning, they still couldn't open up. So you can tell that it had nothing to do really with public safety, right? It's such overkill. Really goes well beyond anything about saving lives. And this is what makes the sort of moral priggishness, you're endangering my life as we go out there, all the worse. All the worse. Look, as if I don't have primary responsibility for my own safety. And that, I think, is what's really getting lost here. At what level of risk do we have the government bring its totalitarian guns out? We really have to address
No.
this issue.
And it's and there are people who have different situations. So in Tamir's situation, he happens to not mind this particular phase, and he's diverting his attention in different ways, and he's doing okay. I assume at a certain point, even he is going to be, and we all have kind of our tolerance levels of this staycation, a forced staycation, as it were, right?
Oh, if
Um,
I had Tamir's Zen, yeah, no, he's
he's
got the correct attitude. Obviously, he's making it
no, but that's always Tamir. Ever since I've ever known him, he's
right.
just he is equanimity personified,
Yeah.
plus so much energy to be able to play that music as
And like
well.
you say, he's turning the lemons into lemonade. He knows how to do that, and that's
Yeah,
his first instinct. That
so
is the healthy, beautiful thing.
yeah. So is this really, is that really the metaphor, taking the lemons and trying to turn them into lemonade? And that seems to be a better metaphor than, and this was how the discussion was going yesterday on a friend's thread. You don't talk about a silver lining to the cloud at all, because
Well, we
it's
all heard Alec. That isn't it wonderful that the environment is, so much better off. And maybe if factories close, maybe we can do without all those material things that we didn't really need anyway. So, no, I've heard more than one. In fact, I read an article that someone had about how wonderful it is that the environment is now getting the priority, and we're not polluting the skies and creating, more greenhouse gases and so forth.
this is total insanity. This is insanity.
Total
and
insanity.
and to me it smacked of what I had heard for the first time. I hadn't heard it put this way until Wednesday, when I had the interview of David Cohen, where he was discussing what he perceived to be a stay home religion, that they were making this into, in effect, a religion. And of course it's the environmentalists who themselves have that fervor, who would take it that way, as oh well, it's so good because it's good for the environment. I mean, you could make the argument that for most people, 2 weeks of a staycation is not really a sacrifice if you actually look at the real trade-off, where people today are just not used to the idea that there can be a pandemic about which our modern society and technology has only so much ability to fight. We did
Right.
there's only so much that can be done, even the best that we have to offer. And again, I've
Exactly
talked
right.
about it before. Our healthcare system is atrophied and everything else. But even if it wasn't, there would be a certain toll. And we
You
were
know, in
we were caught
1918,
off guard. We were caught off
yeah,
guard because of the Chinese. And
yeah.
and you see
Oh,
that the
yeah.
headlines this morning are coming out that, oh, suddenly now they're ratcheting up their death tolls to something more honest.
50% higher. I'm still not sure if it's honest, but
Right.
50% more cases of deaths overnight. Come on.
I saw a meme. I saw a meme, and it's G, and it's his master class is the master class is how to keep
Cover
a
up a
pandemic
pandemic,
under wraps.
right?
Yeah,
Yeah,
cover up a
exactly.
pandemic.
He could teach a master class on that.
You
No,
could laugh on it, right? And this is
it's
another
a sick
question we could
laugh,
talk about.
dark laugh. Yeah.
No, I know. I've been at certain times in this whole thing making a bunch of memes, and the memes are kind of expressing frustration, where I see people maybe just being a little too callous about. There is going to be a lot of, and there has been already a lot of suffering and death. But you could just
Hundreds of thousands of people have died, and you could double that, right? Worldwide,
and
30
going
some
forward,
thousand people have died in this country. And again, you could probably double that going forward. So yeah, but what's astonishing to me is how callous people are to the other kinds of deaths and the other
exactly.
COVID
No,
deaths.
no.
And
And
that
my
is total blindness kind of callousness. The left will say, oh, you right wingers, you're more concerned with profits over lives, not realizing that the very statement they're asserting is a blind callousness to other lives.
right. And again, if you want to make that perceptually real, then maybe, again, I don't know what other experiences that other people are having when they go shopping. But like I said, I saw that one and I thought,
Yeah, scary.
it's time, it's time to go back down.
Right, right.
That's
Because the
really the
harm,
metaphor.
they haven't even considered the harm of the lockdown. And that's the disturbing thing. It's not that there could be some kind of quarantine, maybe in my view, a much more targeted kind of quarantine, more limited.
Again, I don't know if
But
that was
still,
possible at the very beginning.
but like I say,
And it
these
began, all I was in
rules in
favor of
Michigan
was a
are
few weeks.
irrational on the face of it. And on the face of it, buying paint at an open hardware store or not is obviously an irrational rule,
Yeah.
whatever the case is. So
Oh,
a
yeah.
lot of the lockdown was just period overkill. And it's that overkill that makes it less livable for people. So as I say, even if you have a justification for some kind of quarantine, some kind of lockdown, the what has to be acknowledged, at least, and factored in and calculated in. When you listen to Governor Cuomo, it doesn't sound like he even understands the other side of the equation.
Yeah, that's the problem.
And what he's going to do is he's going to hold every single death, attributable to Trump, right? And that's what he wants. It's almost as though he's politically angling so that we can blame a world that isn't perfectly safe on Mr. Trump. And both sides are still playing ridiculous politics as far as I'm concerned. Has nothing really to do with the illness, the kind of rules that we're getting, oppressive rules that we're getting. As I say, a lot of these rules could never have been justified because of COVID, even from the outset. I mean, you can go into a
Well, okay, so a little bit is armchair quarterbacking that too, but again, from the beginning, I was not for.
Please, canoeing, but not motorboating.
No, that's ridiculous. Obviously, none of that could be justified from the beginning. But in terms of just a standard, lockdown that isn't capricious and all that stuff for a couple weeks, 3 weeks and this is if we had, again, all of my conditions before were we had a rational government that was going to do a mea culpa and was going to get out of the way of ramping up all the testing and the different things, and it was really going to be an honest attempt to get a handle on what it is that we're facing, ramping up to be able to face it, and then say, okay, government cannot eliminate risk entirely.
Exactly.
And if it can eliminate a risk, it can only eliminate that risk at other types of costs. Everything's got an opportunity cost.
Oh, just hope that you're suffering from the favored cause of death.
Exactly.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Because the picking and choosing that's going on. People don't even realize with this bailout stuff too. I mean, it's just disturbing to listen to the left. The government, by force of law, closes businesses, sweeping across the economy, closing down, shuttering a healthy percentage of our economy, and the left doesn't see any need. For example, I question the need and the wisdom of government bailouts and corporate welfare, but there they are. They can't even, for the life of them, figure out why on earth the little guy should. They're all in favor of the little guy getting bailed out, so long as you filter it through, racial preference lenses and environmental lenses and stuff. Again, that have nothing to do with COVID-19.
Right.
And people don't fathom really the economic impact of what's going on right now, because you can hear just how blind they are. There's no need. We can't bail out these companies, as if they expect the companies to still be there, right? And the jobs to still be there. It's this wider issue of being totally blind to productive activity that is a massive feature of the left, right?
And
you could hear Bloomberg saying, I can farm, anyone could just put seeds in the ground and, crops come up. It's that attitude. And it's shocking coming from a productive guy
really,
like Bloomberg.
So what I would probably want to send to those people is a little video. Of course, if I was like all those people out in the world who want to have a viral video, I would have pulled out my camera at a perfect angle and I would have just filmed these two, women and said, here, this is what I saw at the shopping today. I can just tell you the story and, promise it's an accurate story, but they should see that. And they should see, here is the cost of people just losing it a little bit, feeling unsettled, and who knows what stresses they had. Maybe they had families who were affected, by the disease itself, or they have families who are unable to pay their mortgage and everything else because of being out of work. And the combination of all this, people are going to be, start fighting the stores versus,
Amy, I prosecuted domestic violence for a while for the San Diego District Attorney's Office. And it is not my position. In fact, it is my educated opinion that most men do not beat their wives or girlfriends.
Sure.
On the other hand, there is a marginal group out there with anger issues, a particular context, the way they were raised. Now, here these people are, a great many of them, 22 million of them have just lost their jobs. We're now facing potentially Great Depression type of economic stresses. Right. And here these people are all shut up at home with their families. What are they able to do? Drink. Okay, so they can drink at home, shut up with their families as they've lost their job. People with anger issues, people with other psychological issues. What do you think is going to happen with domestic violence, child abuse during this time?
Yeah.
And again, that's something that people are utterly blind to. Just in Kentucky, they had an 800% increase in calls to the suicide hotline. 800%, just in Kentucky, and 800%. If you look at the other statistics, it looks like there's a massive blip in suicides going on right now.
Yeah, no, and so that is it, right? That maybe for a certain amount of time, everybody just kind of facing that it really is better down in the water where living normal life, and we can all have the benefits of productive work and everything else. On the surface here, maybe you needed that break to figure out that yes, it's really, even if there's a risk down there, that's where we got to go. That's where we got to go. And maybe there's
to breathe.
Right.
We have to breathe. And I was at a hospital just this Sunday. I don't want to get into the reasons why I was there, but just being at a big hospital here in North County, San Diego, this Sunday, I could hear, first of all, there was no overcrowding. I know there were places that were brought to the edge, like New York City, Louisiana, places where they were really taxed and came very close to, not being able to handle it. Yes. But the hospital here, in the emergency room, the beds were mostly empty. And what I did catch was, because of why I came in, I was saying, boy, I really feel bad about even being here. I didn't want to even, first I didn't want to be exposing myself. And secondly, you guys, weren't your resources being overtaxed? I was told by more than one nurse there, no, thank you. Glad you came in. So many people aren't coming in to get things.
Wow.
Diagnostic procedures coming in when they're having
Yes.
certain kinds of
I
pains.
have blood work I've put off. Yeah.
So how many people are going to have health complications or die because so-called elective medical
Yeah.
diagnostic procedures weren't done, or because they didn't
I know.
follow up on that pain in their chest or that headache they had that they otherwise would have said, hey, geez, this is the third day of my headache. Maybe I should go to a doctor. No, just have that stroke anyway.
No, I mean, you don't have to convince me. And as I said, I got that perceptual level evidence yesterday. And then, as I said, is also if you're looking at the news and you're looking at the way the analysis is going, the writing on the wall all says, again, to go back to my metaphor of deciding it was time to go ahead and go down and dive, even though I was a bit scared to do it.
Right.
It was worth it. It was worth it. It was scary, but I went ahead and did it, and it's because I saw it so rough on the surface. And sometimes maybe you have to see it's rough on the surface,
right,
before it's real to you. And
right.
You see it. It's been time, I think, for a little while. We've already again suffered, I think, unnecessary damage. One of it's Bree over here in the chat at YouTube has said that the 22 million people that they're talking about filing unemployment, being out of work. Bree says, will not go back to work. Unemployment is too sweet, and they have eliminated all the rules. So there's been damage already done. There's going to be more damage every day that goes forward.
Every small business that goes out is someone's life, someone's dream, someone's effort. And if you've ever known someone who's really worked hard to make a small business work, talk about callousness again, to hear our politicians say, oh, so, we'll have a few 100,000 small businesses that get destroyed. So we'll have, 20, 30 million people unemployed. That's the cost.
Yeah, and they think the resources are here, and it's just their job to move them around, and
exactly.
And they can just print some more money. And
it's the Obama, you didn't build that mentality.
It is time.
Since they didn't build it anyway, it'll spontaneously regenerate, I guess.
I mean, thankfully, even the most power-hungry politicians, as I see it, who are out there, are realizing that they do have to let things get started and phase it in. Even Gavin Newsom is sounding like he's got a somewhat reasonable plan to go forward, and that we're going to allow, for instance, restaurants. It's going to be lower capacity, but at least they can open again and people can go out and enjoy a meal and do a number of the things that they did before. It most certainly won't be perfect, but I think even, again, the most isolated, power hungry, wanting to control everything politician is realizing that they're going to have to they're going to have to let this go.
Their rules have little to do with the precautions that I'll take. You know something? I am in charge of my own safety. Yes. I do not want to be the transmission that gets my aging mother sick. So I am going to take my precautions based on what I think is appropriate. And if they trust me for just a little bit, they'll find that probably most Californians aren't so reckless as they want to kill themselves.
No, I think most people are not, and that people are going to need to get out. So I actually am going to have to go from you now, James. Okay. I'm really sorry about that. I have to end the show. Right. But what I want to do, not only do I want to plug Tamir again, because he gave us the pleasure of his company and gave us a great taste of his music. And if you buy a ticket for his show, you will not be disappointed, and you will help keep his small business, which is him basically, and all the things that he does in business during this time. And so the benefit is definitely, it's a win-win, as we like to call it. Go to tamirhendelman.com. Enjoy a relaxing night out this evening. You will smile. You will forget some of this for a while. It's a little tough because you're having to watch on a screen instead of live, but it's really nice. And he always delivers a quality performance each time. So do that. And also there's other things I wanted to tell people about, and I don't know an exact link if there is one. Frank Lloyd Wright properties are streaming out onto Instagram, little video tours and stuff. So probably if you find the right hashtag, you'll be able to find those and actually get virtual tours of Falling Water and some other beautiful properties. So while we're still in this for a while, and it's going to be phased and stuff, so try to enjoy the content that you can as well. Some of it available for the first time in the method that you're able to consume it now online. check it out. So everybody, I got to Zoom. I'm sorry, and that was a pun intended. And I will
Take care.
talk to you next week, if not see you before.
Stay safe and healthy.
You too. Take care.